Hey everyone, here from Tunnel Vision TV, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you guys how to go from PF Track to Maya. I'll show you guys how to do a quick camera track in PF Track, and then how to export the tracking data from PF Track into Maya. So first of all, I basically created a image sequence of my clip. I just used After Effects, but you can use Premiere, After Effects, whatever program you prefer to create that image sequence. And just make sure that the naming of your image sequence is a name and then dot and then the frame number and then dot and then the extension. Because Maya prefers it like this. If you put an underscore after the name and then underscore and then the frame number, that might give you some issues in Maya. So use a dot and then the frame number and then dot and then extension. Alright, so I'm going to go into PF Track and then I'm going to import my image sequence, and then I'm just going to drag it into my viewer here. And then basically all you need to note here is your frame rate. So this is the frame rate that's going to be transferred to Maya when you export the tracking data. So mine's currently set to 24. You can obviously change it to 30 or to 25, whichever you prefer. And I'm just going to quickly play through this. Okay, so now our clip is cached in PF Track. As you can see, we've got the green line, and I'm going to start with a user track, and I'm going to try and add about 10 user tracks to this clip. So I'm going to right click on my footage and I'm going to go to user track, and then on user track I'm just going to create my first tracker. I'm going to set it to this point right there, and then before we start tracking I'm going to change the deformation to rotate, scale and also skew, and then I'm going to set that as default. Click yes, and then I'm going to track forward. Okay, so as you can see, our track actually went off the screen there, so I'm just going to go to the last good frame, and then I'm going to remove my keys to the right hand side, so this button here at the bottom, and then I'm also going to hide those tracks. So basically it's just going to end right there. Okay, I'm going to go to the end. I'm going to create another tracker, create, and let's do this point right here, and then I'm going to track backwards. Okay, let's add another one, track forward. Okay, so I'm quickly going to add 7 more tracks. I'm just going to fast forward through this. Alright, so once you have your 10 user tracks, we're going to go ahead and do a auto track. So I'm going to right click on my user track node, and then I'm going to click on auto track, and I'm going to leave all the default settings, and then I'm just going to go auto track. Right, so once your auto track's completed, I'm just going to scrub through this quickly, and then basically if you have any bad tracks you can delete them. So what I usually do is I just dim my footage, this button here on the side, and then just scrub through, and if you see any of the yellow trackers jumping around, you can delete them. These ones are actually looking pretty good, and if you see any bad ones you can just click on marquee, and then you can select them like this and then just click delete, and you're going to delete those trackers. But in this case they're actually looking pretty good, and yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So next we're going to solve our camera. So I'm going to right click on auto track, and I'm going to click on camera solver, and I'm just going to make sure that's connected to the auto track. And then on the camera solver node, all you need to do is click on solve all, and that's basically going to solve your camera for you. Okay, so once we have that, we can scrub through, and obviously we can see that the grid is not lined up to the floor, so we're going to do that quickly. And an easy way to do that, you can actually do it inside the camera solver now. So first of all, I'm going to try and hide all my auto tracks, so I only see my user tracks. So I'm going to go to my trackers, and I'm going to highlight all my auto tracks. So I'm going to click on auto, go all the way down to the last auto track, just do a shift click so you highlight all of those, and I'm just going to deactivate them for now because we've already solved the camera. They're not really going to use them anymore, and now I can only see my user tracks. Okay, and now I'm going to click on marquee, and I'm going to select 4 of these trackers. So I'm going to select this one, holding command if you're on a Mac, selecting that one. Let's select that one and that one, and then I'm going to set my plane or my grid to those 4 trackers. So here where it says set plane, I'm going to click down and then set that as my XZ plane. Alright, so now if we play through this, you can see that that grid is actually lining up quite nicely to the floor. I actually want to rotate it as well, so it's actually lining up to the tiles as well. And an easy way to do that is click on your camera solver or right click on your camera solver, and then we're going to go to orient scene. Alright, then I'm going to click on rotate here by orientation edit mode. I'm going to set this to rotate, and then I'm just going to rotate my grid so it's kind of lining up to the tiles, something like that. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it's actually looking pretty good. And now if we play this back, you'll see that the grid is actually lining up pretty nicely to the floor. Right, so next we're going to add some test objects. So I'm going to right click on orient scene, and then I'm going to click on test object. Okay, and let's add a cow. Click on add to scene, and then just set this interaction mode to place at selected feature. And then I'm going to click on one of my trackers, and let's add a mushroom. Click on add to scene, and then just click on one of the trackers again, so it's actually positioning it on that spot. And maybe let's add another cow head, maybe add to scene, and then just click on one of the trackers. Okay, now I'm just going to hide my ground, show ground, just untick that, and I'm going to undim the footage, and let's play it through this quickly. And as you can see, those test objects are lining up to the floor. They tracked pretty well, and now we're ready to export our tracking data to Maya. So I'm just going to stop this, and now I'm going to right click on test object, and then I'm going to click on export. So in the export node, make sure that the format is set to Autodesk Maya 2011 ASCII. I'm going to use Maya 2017, but this works perfectly with that. And then just set your file, or just browse to a location where you actually want to save this. I'm just going to call this tracking data, and it's going to have a .ma file extension. Click on save, and then click export scene. Okay, so it's going to give you this message, export succeeded. Click on OK, and now we can jump into Maya. Okay, so here we are in Maya 2017, but you can use any previous version of Maya, it should work fine. So before we start, we're going to create a new scene. So click on file, and then click on the little box next to new scene to go into the preferences or the settings, and then make sure that your frames per second, your time, is set to the same frames per second as we set in PFTrack. In my case it was 24, so I'm going to click on new, and don't want to save that. So basically it's going to create a new scene with a frame rate of 24 frames a second. And next we're going to import our tracking data from the file we exported out of PFTrack. So I'm going to go to file, import, and then I'm going to browse to that that file, and that's my tracking data.ma. I'm going to click on import, and that's going to load the camera and our objects and trackers, etc. As you can see, there we have our camera, and if I scrub through this, you'll see the camera moving. And now currently we have 200 frames in this project, but if we look at PFTrack, you can see that it's going from frame 0 to frame 119, so it's a total of 120 frames. So I'm going to set Maya up in the same way. So I'm going to go back to Maya, and my starting frame I want to set it to 0, so I'm going to set that to 0, and this one to 0 as well. And then my ending frame will be 119, and I'm just going to set that to 119 as well. So basically now we've got exactly the same amount of frames, and the starting and the ending frame will be exactly the same. So that's all good. And next we're going to look through this camera. So I'm going to click on panels here at the top, go to perspective, and then click on my tracking data camera. And that will actually import the image sequence that we're using in PFTrack as well, which is pretty cool. And you can scrub through here, and you can see that our objects are sticking to the floor. What we can do as well is go into your outliner, and then I'm going to go to my camera. So this one here, this is the image plane that's actually showing us the image sequence. I'm going to set my frame cache to 120 frames, and that's basically going to be caching the frames if you play through this. So I'm quickly going to play through this so it actually loads that into memory. And that's how easy it is to go from PFTrack into Maya 2017. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick tutorial. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and also remember to click on that subscribe button